Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen with some dev response. We've had a lot of information on iCache recently. This is the item cache that is replacing the current way that Star Citizen tracks items, assets, ships, how it handles its databases. It is core to Star Citizen, and this new robust service is a stepping stone to true persistence in-game, as well as server meshing. It is super important, and we've had even more information now on how it works from a dev, Chad McKinney. So there was a thread on Spectrum. Does each game server have its own iCache instance, which will partially copy sections of the global database service for quick access? I thought iCache was going to be a horizontally scaled database service that all game servers would be able to access. From the recent Calling All Devs episode, it sounded more like each game server will have its own iCache instance on its drive for quick read-write speeds to the database. Each iCache instance would replicate relevant data from the main global database based on which sections of the game world are loaded on that server. So Chad McKinley replied with a load of answers and info here. iCache is a fleet of services that are, as you say, horizontally scaled, that can be dynamically spun up and down according to requirements, and their number are entirely decoupled from specific server instances. Servers don't have their own databases, but shards, in our usage, this will be a collection of servers in a mesh that work together, will have their own records, and the items and variable database for these shards will be effectively separated from each other, since for the most part, shards don't interact with each other, with the corner case being players moving between shards between sessions. Something I think that was maybe slightly lost in the editing of the episode is that we won't be jumping immediately to a global single shard, but instead this will be a gradual process. Once we introduce meshing, the meshes won't be as large and as dense as our goals of region-sized shards and possibly a single global shard. Instead, they will act kind of like our server instances, but allowing us to bring up the player count from 50. As we test, make improvements, optimize and fix bugs, etc., we'll be able to bring up the player counts to hit the larger goals that we're aiming for, but it won't be day one. So I thought that was very interesting. So we are going to almost certainly see regional servers, regional shards, as it were, which will be larger server instances, effectively with larger player counts, but they are not going to be everyone is in the same instance of Star Citizen. That is the goal, if possible, later, but they are working towards that, and there will be steps towards that that we'll see in-game as the way they sort of like increase that server limit as they get more and more servers being able to communicate with each other, seamlessly sharing data so that they can basically get a larger and larger shard. I personally think a concern here is that we might not be able to see a single global shard. They might have to split down the servers because of whatever sort of like whatever reason. Maybe that's because there's too much latency and lag between regions, something like that. So their goal is a single global shard, but that might not be possible, and that'll be interesting to see where that goes. I suppose we'll just have to wait and see with that. They did say that if that was the case previously, that you'd be able to move between those shards if you wanted to. You'd be able to play with your friends in America if you were in Europe and things like that. So don't worry too much about that, but it is an interesting hurdle that they have to sort of overcome to some degree. Will meshed servers access each other's databases to access data, or will they constantly exchange relevant data directly between each other? The servers in a mesh will be communicating with each other constantly, similarly to how clients and servers communicate with each other constantly, but persistence-based queries will go to the iCache, not other server nodes in the mesh. So, what will the Tier 0 implementation of shards and servers look like? Shards' persistence records are separate so their view of the world is decoupled. This is what I was getting at when I mentioned world lines in the video, but it got pared down to miss some of the meaning I was intending. And just for people that wanted as well, I do have a summary of that video that he was talking about, which I will chuck down in a link below. The goal is getting the player density as high as possible, so players play their entire game experience with Star Citizen in a single shard. It may be that they don't ever go into a shard in EU or Asia. That's going to be decided how region-based sharding will work in the future. That was just some random examples, but from the player's perspective, they will see a consistent view of the world, and their friends will as well, as long as they play in the same region. And before we have region-based shards, we can use matchmaking techniques to get a similar effect. There were some more follow-up questions here as well. It seems like iCache, meshing, and persistence all require one another. Does full persistence require server meshing and vice versa? How's that going to all work? In some senses, they do all require each other to work in the final version we are intending to have, which is why it can sometimes be confusing to explain, as we have to explain both the final vision of the game and simultaneously break down how we phase in segments of the whole system in such a way that they can work without the rest of the system. In short, the goal is server meshing, but for that we require both global persistence and iCache. iCache doesn't technically require server meshing, but you aren't entirely wrong that it appears that there is some relationship to it needing some concept of a shard to start with. The way this works is by effectively treating single server instances as a single server node mesh to start with. Global persistence is in right now in that the global state of the world is persisted, but only per server instance and only in internal memory, so it's not stored to a database, it's volatile. With iCache, we are first moving the server instance-based persistence out of server memory and into a proper database, where it will be parsed out according to shards, as I mentioned above. And as I said, before we get server meshing working, that will effectively mean that each server instance is a single shard mesh, which means it will also have its own shard persistence record. Once we get server meshing rolling, then shards will increase server density, first statically, later dynamically, and then things start to look like our final goal. Up until then, it will be a series of incremental steps and some temporary work to hold us up as we get there. It's like building a ladder while climbing it simultaneously. Finally, there was a question asking if Star Citizen still uses diffusion, that sort of proactively, intelligently distributes data to the server and client, with Chad answering, "We do still use diffusion. It is currently leveraged in many of our back-end services, such as the iCache system." Chad's really killing it with the community interaction and dev responses. You are a legend, sir, and it's really great to see devs get involved like this. But what do you think? Do you think we're going to see iCache integrated in some form by the end of the year? Do you think CIG will be able to get a single global shard that they sort of want eventually? Or do you think that they'll have to have it more region-based? What's your expectation of Star Citizen once it's released when it comes to that sort of like MMO portion? Are you expecting that everyone in the world is going to be in the same server, or are you expecting that there's going to be at least some concessions to that? Whatever you think, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What am I shilling for today, I hear you ask? Do you hate it when people steal all of your money and your house over the internet? I know I do. NordVPN may have been invented by wizards to help protect your personal data from the prying eyes of the dark web, a sinister cabal of technomancers that grow in power the more they know about your browsing habits. The true story of NordVPN's origins are unknown and lost to the ages, and without using facts, no one really knows how it provides more accessibility to otherwise censored websites or a safer security experience for all that use it. All I know is that it does, and that when you sign up to it, the power level of my bank account grows, and I use it, and maybe you should too. Every month we have a giveaway for a Star Citizen ship. For this month of September, it's for the Talon Light Fighter, the Battlebird Glass Cannon. Just comment on any of my videos made during September 2020 to be in for a chance of winning that. That ship should be flyable by the end of the year. If you'd like to further support the channel, there is Patreon or YouTube channel memberships via the join button down below. That will net you some exclusive content each month, but sharing videos, liking, subscribing, dinging the bell, as well as commenting and giving feedback really does help the channel to grow and give me an idea of what you guys want. Thanks very much for watching. You take care, and I'll see you in the verse.